Here we go. Welcome. This is the BTonez podcast, and we're back again for episode 11. And as you can see, the logistics have kind of changed just a little bit to accommodate for the first time ever of hosting a live podcast here in my house. As you can see, I have some guests here with me. You may recognize one brother in the frame who was my first guest here on the podcast, Mr. Kean Baxter. But I also have another brother here with me who's very, very knowledgeable in the areas of finance. And of course, as believers, we always want to combine finance with our faith to make sure that we maximize our prosperity and our management of the resources that God gives us on a regular basis. So I'm not going to spend too much time on my intro, but you know that here on the BTonez podcast, if you don't get nothing else, you're going to get a good word. The first thing I want to do is I want to hand the mic over to our distinguished guest, Mr. Layne. Olwin, as I pronounced that correctly? Correct. Thank you very much. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit about his background, his experience in finances and in faith, and kind of how he came to be in the position that he's at right now. And also a little bit of how Kean met him, because I was introduced to Mr. Layne through Kean. So you can talk a little bit about your introduction to Kean and meeting him. And we're just going to flow and see where this goes.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much. I watched a couple of your episodes, and you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
By the way, and in watching your episode, I realized that you're from a broadcast public speaking background.
Yeah.
I am probably from the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I wanted to just be rich and invisible.
Right. Hey, don't we all know?
No, not everybody wants to be invisible. I wanted to be invisible.
That's true.
I wanted to be invisible. But the other day I was watching a podcast, and they were talking about the data of the richest people, their companies, and the individual followings that they have. And like Virgin, for example, I think they have, let's say, 10 million followers. Mm-hmm. Richard Branson has like 40 million
That's
followers.
Right.
So they're bigger than their brands. Yeah. So if I'm going to build a brand that's worthwhile, I have to somehow come out of the shadows.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of why I'm here.
Let your light shine, right?
Coming out of the shadows. Now, I find that interesting, and I'm happy about that, because the things that I've learned from people are from people who have come out of the shadows enough for me to glean from them. And if it was all behind the scenes or in the shadows, then I wouldn't learn what I've learned or be where I am right now. So I'm here as a part of that. Interesting that you hold me up as a finance expert. I'm just adult learning how to manage.
Be humble.
Just learning to do it myself. But because of that, I question everything. Mm-hmm. And I've come to realize that we have been misled.
Yeah.
With finances is a position I've taken, meaning, growing up middle class to poor. Middle class means that I believe like 3 or 4 people who are poorer than you, whatever.
Right there.
Yeah. So you don't think you're the bottom,
right?
Whatever the world defines you as. Mm-hmm. So that's my definition of middle class. There was one of my mentors from before, and he was quite rich, took companies public, and nobody knew his name, and he was quite well off. And he, in a moment of, I guess, just candid thinking, he said, he paid himself at the time $7 million for the year. So close to $700,000 a month. And he's like, I can't even remember how I used to survive on less than that.
Sheesh.
Right? So to him, if you're on 5 million, you're poor. If you're on 4 million, you're poor. 3 million, 2 million, right? But people I know, if they break 70, they think they're rich and they're getting there. Most people, if they break 70,000 per year, they're excited. Okay. Right. But he was paying himself $700,000 a month from his business. That wasn't all his money, just what he paid himself so that he could live.
Yeah.
And so his perspective of the world is so different. We're totally misguided in thinking that, I've broken 100K, then I'm doing well. Not that you shouldn't be proud of yourself, but to the guy who's making $7 million, you're as poor as a church mouse. You're as poor as a guy who has $1, right? Because there's no real difference. You couldn't pay his expenses for 2 days. And so we need to sort of hold on to what we know, but put it down and pick up other perspectives just to look at the world differently. So I don't pay myself $7 million a year, but I can also laugh at someone who pays themselves less than that and thinks that they're rich. And so in looking at finances, one of the ways I think we've been misled is in focusing on price. When, people go looking for 5-cent savings on gas and 50-cent savings on gas, and they drive 24 miles to save 23 cents on gas. The example that I ran in my head was, if you drive 20,000 miles and you get 20 miles per gallon, you use 1,000 gallons for the year. Now, if you save 5 cents per gallon and we spend hours just so we could save $50, when you think about the hours that we spend thinking about it and think we're progressing, and if I say to you, okay, I'll give you $50, you turn it into 100 in 2 weeks, and I'll give you another 100. Most people wouldn't know how. We think one is valuable. One, I think, is valuable and scalable, right? Learning how to turn $50 into 100, 100 into 200 or 50,000. Most people, if you give them $50,000, they know which bills they would pay. But if I said, turn it into 100, and if you turn it into 100, I'll give you $1 million, they would lose the $1 million.
They have no idea.
They have no idea. So the game that they are playing, if there's a game, is how can I distract you with pennies so that you don't learn how to make dollars?
It's sad because in congruency with that, we're not taught in our educational institutions how to multiply.
No.
It's just to manage. Like when bills come in, we have a budget based on the regularly reciprocal bills that we're going to have month to month.
Yes.
And we set aside a portion for that, but do not set aside a portion for the growth of our money at the same time.
Right.
And that's troubling. And it's not only that, but it's about the mindset to want to do it because it's a risk.
Yes.
It's a risk.
Well, the concept of risk is interesting, right? Because what we call risk often is what the banks call assets, right? So it's a risk to us, but not to the bank who's backed us, right? If you buy property, the bank is fully covered because not only is your house worth $500,000, you're guaranteeing it, and if there are two people buying it, you're guaranteeing that you're going to pay the bank back the money. There's no risk to the bank. There's a risk to you,
right?
Because God forbid something should happen, an explosion, a fire, or something next door, you have no value, but you still owe the bank the $500,000 that they had you sign.
Wow.
Right? So we go to sleep thinking that we're covered.
They were secure.
No.
False sense of security.
False sense of security. The bank is covered. Right? The bank is truly covered, but we're exposed. And that's the exposure that we're living in, we're comfortable with, and we encourage our kids to go into that kind of exposure. And that is the money game that we're trying to win. Right? Or part of the money game that we're trying to win. We're on the losing side. The table looks like this. We're here, but we're comfortable. So we think we must be okay. If nothing else, it's familiar, right? Because if your parents had a home, they were in the same position. And so it's familiar. And they were sleeping. So I go to sleep.
Yeah.
They had a 30-year mortgage, right? Yeah. So I'll go to sleep. But we don't question, okay, what is it that the bank is doing with us that we should be doing, which is how we start flipping the game for ourselves.
How can we be our first?
Yeah. How can we be the bank or mimic what the bank does?
And the first step is to forget about flipping coupons.
Well, I'm not even sure if you should forget, right? But don't think of it as the super smart thing that you think it is, because it doesn't get you there. Let's say you have time on your hands and you're going to clip coupons for 10 people and they're going to pay you half of that in money. Okay. Maybe it's worth it. Maybe there's a strategy there. But what happens is, and I see people who feel like they're winning if they save $5 in coupons, $3.50 in gas, and 14 cents over here because they went 3 doors over and spent half an hour in line in the discount place to buy paper cups at some saving. And then you say to them, okay, here's $500, double it and keep it, and then give me my $500 back. I'm going to give you an investment start. Here's $5,000. Here's $10,000, double it. If you could double it in 6 months and give it back to me, you will have your start. I'll get my $10,000 back. I'll give Brother Brad the money, right? So he can launch his investment. And we could do that with one $10,000. We could launch like every month for the next 7 years. One $10,000 could be launching a brother.
Man, it's a wonderful idea.
If we knew what to do with money, but we don't. And we don't even know that we don't know how to double $10,000.
We don't know.
So we're not asking that question, right? But you're asking, how much is that chicken? Is it on sale?
Is it on sale?
Yeah.
Is the gas at this station?
So if you ask the wrong question, even the right answer is still wrong.
Ooh. Just to give you a bit of an opportunity to speak about how you came into contact with Layne.
So I will never forget it. I was actually on the last day of a 7-day fast, and I
didn't know that.
I normally don't even go to Layne's church, CPC, and I was in the hallway after service, and I was talking to a young man that I know who was actually fasting with me. And we're just hanging out, and I just see this guy just kind of hanging out, wandering around, and he just kind of moseyed along, and picked up a conversation.
Yeah.
And the more we talked, the more I realized, okay, there's some depth here. There's some commonality. Like we have the same vibe. I forget what we started talking about, but I think it may have been like money, finances, or kingdom, something along those lines. And the more we talked, I realized like, okay, I need this guy. Matter of fact, I really believe it was providential. That, I don't remember exactly what I was praying for, but I'm always praying for, God's leadership, like what's the next step in my life.
Right.
And so I believe that, Layne has the knowledge, the wisdom, and the experience that I needed. So I took his information. I said, hey, let's do lunch. And we had lunch. Was it the next week, or maybe the next week or week after? And he just started sharing with me his experience and what he went through. And I was like, man. So I adopted him as my my financial advisor / uncle.
It's like I'm doing the same thing. It's certainly providential because we're all sitting here together right now recording this episode. So you see how the Most High works. And I know there's so many people who have the mindset that we've been discussing, not knowing how to transform their money into more money, how to multiply it and what to do with it other than paying for bills. And it is reciprocal. It gets passed down from generation to generation. With that being said, I wanted to ask the question, what are some practical means that people can start to do in better managing their money? Like one thing I want to suggest just to start it off is the mindset of it. Being able to be willing to change your mind about what you use your money for. Because I'm gonna be honest, for myself, when I started to change my mind and invest more in business, more in my education, rather than have the priority be the bills that I was going to pay, it was transformational because of the amount of information I was getting. I invested in books. I was listening to audiobooks. I'm going to conferences. Listening to people who have done this. And prior to my willingness to do that, I kind of had that mentality where I stood back and I looked at it and I was like, man, they're doing it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. And that was my first mistake. Telling myself, I don't know if I'll be able to, or I can't do that right now, or I don't even know when I'm gonna be. These types of disempowering thoughts circulate in our subconscious mind, and it happens so regularly, it keeps you in that stuck position. And this is the example I want to bring out to how it can change. Let's say somebody's comes to you and is like, I'm going to give you a brand new car today. And it's like first thing come to your mind is, man, how am I going to afford the gas for it, the insurance, the car payment? You ain't ask no questions. You said, I'm just going to give you a car. But then let's say after you were having all these thoughts, you come around and reluctantly it's like, okay, I'll take the car. And then the person actually drives the car to your house. And you see it outside of your house. It's shiny. It's brand new. And then you get the keys put into your hand. Your thoughts are are not really thinking too much about, okay, how am I going to do this? You start to ask questions. Is the car paid off? Does it have gas in it? Does it work properly? Was it pre-owned? You start asking all these questions. And if the answers were all favorable answers, all your fears and pains are now alleviated. You have to take the same type of inquisitive attitude towards better money management.
Yes.
Let's say it's like, man, you can't have the thought it's like, okay, if I invest in this, then I ain't gonna have enough money for that. The question should be, how much better will I be?
Yes.
How much better off will I be if I manage this correctly, if I save this amount so I can double it? And then once that starts to happen and materialize because you're now have the mental focus in doing it, then you start to see the fruits of your labor. But it all starts in the mind. It all starts with the words that you speak. You got to be very conscientious of that. And I know I've stressed this point again before, but especially with finances and the management thereof. So I want to get back to the question that I have for both of you. What are some of the practical methods and means people can start to do now?
Before I even attempt to answer that, I wanted to add, because you're dropping some powerful gems right now. I take the negative thoughts and the negative self-talk that we do, I take it a step further in how I think of it. I think it's actually our prayers. When I say to myself, oh, I will never be able to afford that, or that is so expensive, or how did you do it? I am praying, and the words I'm praying will be blessed by the divine. That I cannot afford that. I just prayed it. So when I stop for 10 minutes in the day and say, oh, bless me, bless me, bless me, Lord, it's 20 hours of me saying, don't bless me, Lord. And then 5 minutes of saying, bless me, Lord. And then we're wondering why the 5-minute prayer isn't coming through. We live in prayer with emotions that we connect to the negative word. That
if I brought gems, you just bought the mother diamond. That was the blood diamond. You know what I'm saying? That's what that. It's so true. And the word backs up what he just said. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. The Most High establishes the word of the mouth. I know that's found. I do not remember the verse, but I know that it says that. And then, as the man thinketh in his heart, so is he. First chapter of James, when he talks about, do not let a man think that he shall receive anything of God if he's a double-minded man.
Right.
And that's
He's unstable in all his ways.
Yes.
There are very simple verses in the Gospels where Christ said, if you ask anything in my name to the Father, believe it.
Yes.
You shall receive. That is so simple. It's almost unbelievable.
Right.
The reason why we have that unbelief is because we naturally practice what you say. The negative prayers, 20 hours of, I don't know, I don't think, I can't, versus, God, please bless me, give me this. And then as soon as the prayer is over, you look right back at the reality of the situation and you have no belief in faith.
Right.
That's double-mindedness.
I'm flipping what you're saying now, that we have 100% faith in the lack. It's not that we disbelieve, we believe the lack. So when I have to check for 15 cents, that is not provision. That I'm not open to provision if I'm trying to say 15 cents over here, because he's going to struggle, God's going to struggle, the divine's going to struggle with providing you $1.50 or 15 cents. That is 100% faith in the divine not coming through.
Have mercy. Have mercy.
I've been approached a few times in my life for mentorship, and I'm still learning to be mentored. But none of the people who've approached me for mentorship, I think, has tapped 10% of what I know. So I'm thinking the people I've gotten gems from, they have so much more, right? And they're not God. They're just people who've done things. God has so much more for us, just waiting for us. I have come to realize that something I was praying for essentially for 40 years was answered in year 1, but I saw it in year 40. And some of what I just said about understanding money and the lack and where we're coming from is that knowledge. Because, you know, I used to save 15 cents. I used to pride myself in, you know, back in the day, using $1.50 for lunch because I was scrimping and saving money. But when you win that war, when you win that battle, you've lost the war because you still don't know how to turn $1,000 into $2,000. And some of us live and die, and we manage to have assets, you know. We still don't know how to turn $1,000 into $2,000. That should be a part of the fundamental thinking of how we even approach money. Before we would put $1 in it, what are the right money questions to ask is sort of where we should be, right? Because it's possible if they get rid of currency that some of what we're talking about now won't be relevant, but it will be always right to ask about the right money questions, right? Because it's a thinking. I've come to understand that 100% of our cash flow should go into investing.
100%.
100%.
No, I like that.
I've come to understand after 40 years that there's no such thing as savings.
Okay. So investment in contradistinction to savings.
Yeah, savings doesn't exist.
Okay.
Savings is a word they invent for people to put money in the banks so the banks can play with it and grow it for them.
Because the banks are investing.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. It's kind of like the parable of the 5 talents. I knew we were going to get around it some way. It's hiding. The last servant hid his stuff in the earth. He was saving it.
Oh.
He didn't multiply.
I never considered that. He put it in the bank.
He put it in the bank of the earth. And he's like, yo, and he told him, he's like, I knew you were a shrewd man. You didn't, you reap what you haven't sown. So I just, set it aside for you in case you want to do something. He looked at him, he's like, you did what? And matter of fact, what he did was worse than a bank because the master came back and said, he said, you could have at least put it there so I can get some usury for it, so I can get some interest for me. Yeah. He put it in a place like under his mattress.
Yes.
He put his money under his mattress.
Yes.
Like
and
grandma used to do.
That's what a lot of people did because they knew that's their backup plan. One thing I found out about the Most High is that when you're trusting him, and you have faith in him, you cannot have a plan B. He has to be your plan A.
Say that again.
You cannot have a plan B.
No.
It was exemplified in the trip down to Tampa Bay. I hopped in the car. I was like, okay, here we go. What you gonna do? Wow. And he came all the way through in the miraculous way. Another thing to answer your question that you asked earlier is like, how does God feel about this? Without faith, it is impossible to please God.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if the word impossible to please him without the belief that is required, it's like that everything we doing, all the plan B, all the negative talk after the request, none of that pleases him. He's sitting there like, he ain't ready yet. She ain't ready yet.
More than that, like what Layne said, like just considering the abundance that the Most High has, he's frustrated with us. He has to be frustrated with us.
Yeah, I think because he is the Most High, he's elevated above frustration. But I agree. On our plane, I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
But a part of the Bible uses gentler language than I use, because when it says without faith, again, when you flip it, it's when you have faith in negative outcomes with my provision, you must displease me. When you have your plan B, it's because you don't think God is going to come in. So that means you have faith in the lack of God's provision.
First.
Right? If you ever called me for $10 and I said, yep, I'm going to send you $10 tomorrow, would you call Brad and say, oh, Layne's not going to come in with the $10. Let me back me up if Layne doesn't come through for $10. Oh. No. But why do we do it for 10,000? We know God's going to come through for $10. Right? Is $10,000 harder for God?
Oh. That's why you need the faith tests gradually. He leads you through them gradually. One thing I want to bring up very briefly is the fact that when I took this trip down there, it was like a first domino that was falling.
Yes.
Because I believed he could do it. And I prayed in such a way to where I focused my belief on what my Father has, which is everything.
Yes.
I focused my belief on the fact that abundance is his. He even impressed me on it. I was on a walk one day and I saw trees and blades of grass around the track I was walking around. And he was like, I know every leaf on the tree by number.
Yes.
I know every blade of grass. And if that wasn't enough, the scripture tells you that every hair on your head is numbered.
Yes.
If I have all those numbers in my head, what makes you think I don't know the number of all the money in the world, which hasn't left the earth?
Wow.
It's all there. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof.
Yes.
So I'm like, if it's all his, he just moves it around. That's why I love what you said. There is no savings. It's only circulation.
Yeah. Yes.
Only circulation.
Right.
If you are an open vessel so that God can channel his power through you to use the resources that he gives to bless other people, then he'll keep stocking you.
Yes. Yes. Because imagine walking into someone's house and they have a tank of just air for themselves to breathe, right?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
That's what we do with money, right? There's not a breath that you've taken, that you've taken on your own. But somehow the God who makes you breathe, right? And if you've ever seen a baby born, you know that the first breath is a miracle. But we are not thankful for the breath 5 years in and 10 years in and 15 years in and 40 years in. We're not thankful for that next first breath. But if you've known anyone who died, there's not that next breath. So all their talents and all their earning is tied to God giving them breath.
Come on, man.
But we are not thankful for the dollars that come in. And when it comes in, I jump in front of God and say, well, I earned this.
Oof.
It's all his giving to you. And as you mentioned, Brother Brad, and if you put it back out there, it will circulate and come to you just like the air, right? You're not worried about tomorrow's air today. Let me not breathe too much because I'm going to need breath tomorrow. But that's what we do with the money that God gives us. We think we've earned it. Our version of stewardship is hide it away so no one knows that we have it, so that we pull it out, and God doesn't need to come in and bless us. And God is saying, but I have all of this for you.
And that's why and this is something that God had to show me, that I've inherited a poverty mindset. Being cheap with myself. And with, but it's actually dishonoring God. You think you call it good stewardship, but you're actually dishonoring God because it's not growing. Something you said early when we met really stuck with me, that all the water, all the air, all the resources that would be needed for the entire Earth history were there at the beginning.
At the beginning.
There was gold in the garden before there was a store.
Yeah. I had I cleaned my car this morning, and so they took out my seeds. I had a grain of corn. I was going to bring it and give you $1 million and give you $1 million in a grain of corn. How much money is in a grain of corn? How many times are you going to plant it?
Oh, you planted millions.
Right. So when you plant one grain of corn, on average, it gives you 3 ears of corn. Each ear, on average, has 800 grains of corn
on it.
That many,
right? So when we're afraid of debt and all of that, we're not thinking kingdom principles. If I have 1 grain of corn from God, I could plant it, leave it to grow, tend it, and get 800 times 3, 2,400 grains of corn from one corn. And that is natural from God. That's not me praying for it. That's not me fasting for it. That's what God built in for us. Take the 2,400 seeds and plant them again.
2,400 what times? You said how many average?
800.
800, so 2,400 times 800.
800, yeah.
We're getting into the 6 figures very, very quickly. Very quickly.
We're not talking about inventing any new...
Nothing new.
Nothing new.
No,
something that exists today.
Wow.
And except for the labor, you could almost go do it on state land, and if they take half of it, who cares, right? Because you get to plant again. See,
this is why the word says, in all you're getting, get understanding. Because at the very least, your mind should be opening up to the concepts and principles being outlined here. And we're talking about growth, and about multiplication, and about how things are already standard and set up for abundance.
Yeah.
It's just about what we focus on.
Absolutely.
The focus must be in the right place.
This is to that point, God is not a God of addition. God of
multiplication. Multiplication. So unfortunately for us, when we sit and we talk about the lack, what we do is we essentially take the corn out of the ground, throw it away, and then turn back to God and say, God, but I've been praying to you for you to send something.
You're not only talking to them, you're talking, because I'm analyzing myself. Like, I've begun adapting this idea, but you got to be meticulous and honest with yourself.
I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to myself, because this is what I've lived, which is why I can talk about it, right? So before we transition to the corn coming in, because God bless me enough times for me to figure out that I should plant corn, right? So that I do have corn, ears of corn coming in, right? I'm saying that the gap in the deception is that we are on this side of debt and lack, fighting, but we're not even fighting in the right direction. Because if I outsave you 15 cents and you outsave me 50 cents and you save, $2 per week on gas, we're all losing. Because the first time God gives us $10,000, we will not know what to do with it. And so if you're going to pray for $10,000, say, God, please help me see 5 ways I can double $10,000.
Come on, man, come on.
So that I'm ready for it. I see people saying, if I, with their ticket on the bus, saying, if I win this, I'm going to pay off my mom's house. I'm going to be, and I'm like, that's an exact way to lose $1 million. But they perfected that. Yeah, we've perfected
ways to lose.
Start asking people, because I did it for a while. If you got 10,000, how would you double it? I'm still waiting years on some people to call me back. They still don't know, but they want it, and it's like, how do you know it's not there? Or I'm sure I could show them where it is, but clearly, I know that God has blessed them with it already, because I see it. But if they don't see it, the blessing's not there.
If you don't see it, that means you're not using it. And why would God give you more if you're not using what you already have?
The more is there already. When I've come to realize that the 100% investing that I've spoken about, if you do that and you do the math, in 2 years, you can have your whole income coming to you just working 2 years and investing. If you invest 100% of your income and you don't focus first on bills, within 2 years, based on the returns you're getting, you can be financially independent.
The returns from investments will
replace your income, will match your income, exceed your income.
What are some of the investment channels that you would recommend first and foremost, besides, I'm guessing, stock market?
Corn would be one of them, right? Right? Corn or the stock market or real estate. But the idea is, if you understand or expect that you are going to have every dollar that you've earned always working for you for always, then you're in a totally different mindset, right? Because if you're going to invest all your money and it's going to give you a return, soon enough, 5 years worth of income invested will earn you a particular return, right? And at some point, when you figure out the game, how to turn 10,000 into 20, you will have 5 years worth of income. Now, if that's $100,000 per year, you'll have $500,000. But you'll know how to turn it into $1 million. If we win the shortage and debt game over here, it means we're losing over here, because we know nothing about investing. We know nothing about multiplying our money. We know nothing about the abundance that God has provided for us. And that's the real loss.
That's the difference.
I know when I was younger and I wanted to be rich, I wanted to be rich so I could profile, so I could rock up in this and show up in that and have them say, oh yeah, look at him in that, right? But if we start looking at every purchase that we've made through the eye of, okay, is it something I want for me or is it something I want for external approval, right? We'll probably not buy half of what we have, right? And then, I see people all the while. I see people, TV, oh, we need so much closet space, and I'm looking at the clothes, and I'm like, well, none of it's really nice, right? So, how many things do you have that you don't even think are nice, but you want the numbers? We come to the same conservative spending, but not from the position of lack, right? And not because I'm trying to not spend $45 on this. It's like, okay, do I want that for me or do I want it for somebody else? And I want it for me, so I buy it, I put it on. So you might only have 10 beautiful things that you like, which also meets all the requirements for the people who are saying you should live in lack, right? Because you've only spent 10 shirts worth of money. You don't have 100 dress shirts, right? So it still only is $1,000, but they're 10 really, really nice shirts, right? So I'm not saying you should waste everything. I'm saying that it should come from a better place.
Motivation.
The motivation, because, if you are a child of God, then you should look good, but you're not looking good to show off.
Layne, I'm gonna say that there's too much. I don't think we have enough time, but this is part one. I made in my mind that this is part one. How we shoot part two will come into existence, but I definitely want to pick your mind a little bit more. But just as a summation for our audience before we close out, what's the key takeaway that you want people to at least start with, practically in either investing or thinking about or doing, that they can start doing today to change their mindset? Would there be anything that you could suggest?
If you think about how close you are to understanding the possibility of 100% investing, then that should give you a list of things that you might want to start learning. I'm happy that we'll be talking more about it. Because on the one hand, I see Dave Ramsey's of the world. I've taken his course and I was in the course saying, no, that's not how you get rich. No. But there was a time before that where I was following his principles before he existed as a teacher. But now that I've come to understand it, I realize that if you follow Dave Ramsey's formula, it will cost you millions. It will cost you millions because you still don't know about growing money. But if you learn to grow money, money will take care of all the little bitty bills that we think are substantial.
His focus is how to get out of debt.
Right, but the bank is not out of debt. There is no dispenser of capital that's out of debt. This is why I also speak against savings. When you go to the bank and the savings says we're going to give you 4%, right? There are also accounts when you go to the bank that they give you 3 times the money that you've just put in and you get access to it. The same bank that will give you 4% will give me 100% of my money that I've just put in a particular account with instructions. I know people who negotiate the rates that they get with their money when they put the money in the bank, the same bank.
Are you familiar with diversified cash flow accounts? It's where you get compound interest when you put your money in. I made an investment into a life insurance policy that allows that. Right. The money that I put in on a monthly basis allows it to earn compound interest, and I can withdraw it at any time, and I treat them like my bank.
Yes, I've heard about that, and there's someone that I'm talking to that I'm learning about that. That's a brilliant instrument that I've heard about, but there are others. You get access to more than you've put in and it grows, but the same bank does that. Again, we're over in the kiddie pool of money thinking that we're winning, but we're not. We're not in the game. We're not in the game. And if the concept of 100% investment is like I imagine some people might even laugh. That means you're that out of the game because it is accessible, and there are people who you might be even moving around. They're playing on a different money plane.
Wow. Yeah, we got. I want to shut it off right there on that cliffhanger because we want the next discussion we have. I want to look more into those options,
right? To
where money can start to be grown amidst perceivable risks, but everything's a risk. I watched the Jim Rohn video today. He was like, everything's risky. Being born is risky. Eating a meal is risky.
Being alive is risky.
So it's like you should cast that out of the window. It's about changing your mind and adopting the fact that you may not know everything that you need to know and having the desire, like you said, being ready to explore. When you said 100% investment, I'm like, man, that means I could double. Like my first thought now was versus what a couple years ago. I was like, man, I could double my paycheck. I could triple my paycheck. Like that's where my mind went instead of, well, how am I going to pay my bills? Because that could be the alternative thought.
Yeah, I have two daughters, almost 9 and 12. And I talk to them all the time about money. The night they were born, I kept talking to them about real estate and investments. I'm like, your brain is going to think differently.
Right. Yeah.
Your brain's going to think differently. The floor I expect for my kids is that they will never spend $1 that they've earned. Every dollar that they will earn will be invested for them. And the flow from that investment will be what they spend. So I think that's the least we could do as parents. And there, I see people wanting to pass down generational wealth, but they're trying to pass money down to the kids. No, that destroys them because they're not sure how it came. They don't know what it is, and either they try to spend it off, or they try to shoot another family member for it because there's this thing that we know nothing about that we have. Yeah. But if you know that every dollar you earn is going to be invested for whatever period is needed, we will carry you until your investments can support you. And then every dollar that you earn, whether you're a W-2 or business owner, it makes no difference, because what we should be doing with money, because we have no clue, we think there is lack, but we are living in an ocean of money. We can't financially breathe because we're not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Layne, I want to thank you for your expertise that you've given in this brief period of time. I would definitely be calling you back to the podcast again very soon. This is going to be part 1, like I said, of Faith and Finances. Kean, thank you for joining us also again. We're going to bring you back as well to continue on this conversation. In the meantime, when this video is posted, there's going to be opportunity for questions and comments. Get them in there. I advise you to do it now, especially when it comes to finances and money management, because it's an area that we don't have too much expertise about. So if you have your questions underneath the video, we're going to review them and we're going to cover them live when we have the next part of this episode. Thank you for joining us. Layne, I want to shake your hand, Kean. Definitely. Me and your boys, man. We're going to be back again, but this has been another episode of the BTonez podcast. If you like this material, please like and subscribe. Leave your questions and your comments. I will leave the contact information for both of my distinguished guests today if you have questions specifically for them. And like I said, the next time we meet, we'll be covering them. But until then, may the Most High bless and keep you, and we'll see you on the next episode. That concludes another episode here on the BTonez podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Till the next time we meet, may Yah bless and keep you. Hi, I'm Bradley BTonez Tramel, and here on the BTonez podcast, if you like our content, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you leave a comment, we'll be sure to get right back to you. And if you're interested in becoming a voiceover professional, or maybe you just want to become better at presentation, or acquire the skills necessary to teach and instruct, or learn the techniques of facilitation, or overcome any nervousness and fear of public speaking, we have an online growing community to support those needs. Contact me today via email at btonezmic@gmail.com or on Instagram at @ToneMastersLLC. Thank you for watching.